Hello. Welcome to The Ideas Man, James McPherson Gripton. I'm your host, Mary Valentich, and guide to the remarkable 60-year social work career of my late partner, Jim Gripton. Based on our 33 years of personal and professional collaboration, I will present his contributions to social work education, practice, and research, and show why, in my view, he ranks so highly as an innovator. I hope you enjoy the journey. Let's begin with what drew Jim to social work. In a 2003 interview, Jim readily acknowledges his parents' influence, especially their helping attitude towards family, friends, and strangers. Jim noted that one never knew whom his dad would bring home for dinner.
Certainly my father was disappointed because he had hoped that I would succeed him and take over the family business. I knew that that wasn't a particular interest that I wanted to pursue. My mother was much more sympathetic, although I think she found it difficult to understand why I made this particular choice. The important thing was, regardless of their questions about the direction I was taking, they were both tremendously supportive. They were both very much socially oriented, and my experience with them growing up was that they were always ready to lend a hand to support friends and relatives who were in difficulty or disadvantaged.
Jim's dad loved to write and kept copies of his voluminous correspondence. He doted on wee James and praised his sports and academic achievements. He often took him on his travels. For example, in 1933, he took Jim to the Lincoln Memorial in Washington and to the World's Fair in Chicago. He wrote in 1933 that his boy would be either a liberal or a Democrat. And he noted that he would rather let him work things out for himself than wait upon him and plan out his problems. This, his dad thought, helps to make little Jimmy somewhat efficient. Jim described his mother as a progressive, health-conscious woman who oversaw the family's several moves and managed the family business, the Canada Stamp Company, when her husband was traveling. Regrettably, she died in her early 50s of heart disease. Jim's sister, Catherine, was born in 1925. She became a landscape architect and an expert on oil lamps. In 2001, she wrote that their parents provided my brother and me with an environment that nurtured observation, education, love, and trust. We can't underestimate the importance of parental influence on career choice and how one conducts one's career. Mostly, Jim attended top-quality private schools that his dad favored. The family even moved to Port Hope, Ontario, to be near Jim's school, Trinity College, where he excelled in courses and a wide range of sports. Jim made 2 false starts in his university career, failing first-year engineering at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. Engineering did not capture him, though he always remained connected to the physical and technological, even commenting in his later years that he wanted to be a handyman when he grew up. He loved fixing things and seeing the results. In his second run at being a frosh, this time at the University of Toronto, Jim roomed with 3 fellows who were very politically minded and very involved with the arts, especially music. One was gay and personally knowledgeable about discrimination and oppression.
Coming to university from a pretty protected and sheltered experience in high school in a private boarding school, this opened my eyes to situations and perspectives that I hadn't encountered heretofore, and it led to my political radicalization, and also I discovered art and classical music through the roommate who was in fine art. And I got much more intrigued and involved in these activities than in my regular courses, to the extent that I flunked my first year, the courses in which I was enrolled. But I still see that as the most significant educational experience that I had in university. So that's where my orientation towards social work and social welfare really crystallized.
Jim's extracurricular life was so engaging that he overlooked university expectations, such as going to classes and writing final exams. Nonetheless, this first-year experience, fostered by his roommates, provided the foundational learning for much of his later work and personal satisfactions. Jim noted that he became radicalized in this period, and his politics always remained on the left, first CCF and then NDP. During these undergraduate years in the early 1940s, Jim the activist emerged. He became a conscientious objector during World War II. Perhaps this was not surprising, given a brief and unwelcome stint in a U.S. boys' military academy. As well, he almost didn't graduate from high school because he refused to complete the marksmanship requirement in a shooting course.
During the war, university students were actually given exemption and were required to join the officers' training program as one of the conditions.
As an undergraduate, Jim demonstrated his capacity to innovate, challenge, and to organize. He describes how in 1943, in his second year, he and a couple of friends initiated the University of Toronto's first social action club, much to the dismay of the university administration. The university insisted that the club be known as the Humanist Club. Jim identified the club's underlying principle as follows: that persons of different religious faiths, or no religious faith at all, could unite about particular social values and social goals, and could organize to take action in relation to those. As president of the Humanist Club in 1944-45, Jim became a member of the Japanese-Canadian Coordinating Committee, organizing the opposition by various civil rights groups and churches against the internment of Japanese Canadians.
The particular project that we became most heavily involved in was challenging the federal government's action during World War II in interning Japanese Canadians and confiscating their property on the West Coast. Through that experience, we met social democrats and civil rights people from many organizations, and carried forward that action to the Supreme Court in Canada and then to the Court of Westminster, which at that time was the final judicial arbiter. We didn't win, but that experience itself was a very important one for us.
Soon after graduation in 1945, Jim, Murray Thompson, and Don Franco launched Toronto's first urban day camp, designed to enable children to discover their city. Over 50 years later, Camp Robin Hood still continues.
With the YMCA, I had become involved in the summertime working at YMCA camps. And so I had that good camping and camping administration experience. And that led to my being interested in developing a day camp in Toronto. And again, I did that with two friends from university. And we set up an urban day camp, one that didn't depend on ersatz Indian themes, but emphasized a day camp that enabled children to explore and understand aspects of the urban environment.
Based on his undergraduate YMCA work fellowship, Jim was oriented towards social work. His first position was as Assistant Boys Work Secretary with the Central YMCA in Toronto. However, he felt this particular Y ignored the needs of the working poor, and he moved to Big Brothers in 1947. While at Big Brothers, Jim embarked on a short-lived venture to improve social workers' working conditions. He organized social workers into their first union, the Toronto Local Social Services Employees Union of America. It was a union labeled communist in the USA.
I also became involved immediately after graduation in a union that was organizing social workers in Ontario, and became the president of that local. So I was very much involved in left-wing politics and social action activities during university.
Jim completed his BSW in 1948 and his MSW in 1958, both at the University of Toronto.
I did very well in my BSW year. I had straight A's and was the first in the class of 125.
He had applied to Columbia University in New York for his master's, but was denied admission, despite his being first in his BSW class. Likely the US was not keen on his activism. Jim's friend from undergraduate days, Murray Thompson, long ago dubbed Jim the ideas man, adding, but he had a lot of that organizing ability too. As an innovator, Jim identified issues early in their development, envisioned new ways of seeing and solving problems, and took personal and professional risks in implementing his ideas. Throughout his career, he sought social justice and to advance social work education, practice, and research for the betterment of individual, family, organizational, and community functioning. I will highlight his innovative contributions in relation to the prominent themes that characterized his 60-year career. During his 12 years at the Children's Aid Society of Metropolitan Toronto, Jim had many firsts in his career, all of which enhanced or expanded the nature of social work's professional base. In 1948, following a successful field placement at Children's Aid, Jim and a couple of other male BSW graduates were the first men hired by the Children's Aid Society as social workers in foster care.
This was post-war, World War II, and there was a tremendous demand for professionally trained social workers, so there was no difficulty getting employment as a BSW graduate.
At that time, I would think that social work would have been an unusual choice for a male.
Well, it continues to be an unusual choice for a male. Indeed, together with two other fellow graduates of the BSW program, male graduates, we were employed in the foster care department, and were the first males to be employed as caseworkers. And I think the reason for that was that the director, Stuart Sutton, felt that there were many, particularly adolescent wards, male wards, who could benefit from a male caseworker. And so the three of us were assigned very challenging caseloads of adolescent male wards.
What size were those caseloads out of
Well,
curiosity?
in those days they were about 70, 75.
Among the three of you?
Yeah, no, each of us
Each
would
of you
have.
had that, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
3 years later, when the agency set up its own guidance clinic, Jim was one of the 3 caseworkers selected to work intensively with an unusually small caseload of 12 challenging youth. By 1956, as Director of Training and Personnel at the Children's Aid Society of Metropolitan Toronto, Jim was well aware of the shortage of qualified social workers in Canada. To build the agency, Jim located the Society for Overseas Settlement of British Women and recruited a number of women with social work backgrounds. He created case aid positions for them and initiated something novel, in-service training. He also made it possible for them to return to Great Britain for a visit after 2 years of service, thereby lessening the normal homesickness that tends to result in loss of workers.
So quite suddenly, over a period of about 3 years, the Children's Aid Society expanded from an organization that perhaps had 150 staff to one that had over 300 staff. And that led them to appoint a director of personnel, and that happened to be me. So I took over the position of Director of Training and Personnel, and I found that a very challenging assignment to have a principal responsibility for integrating the staff of the 3 merged agencies and all of the considerable difficulties that are always involved, personnel difficulties that are involved in such mergers. And I also saw as a major responsibility the upgrading of the qualifications of the social work staff in the agency. And I undertook a number of measures to improve on that, and over a period of 3 years it increased the percentage of social workers, caseworkers with a professional degree from 25% to 45%.
Also, in the 1950s, Jim initiated flexible job arrangements for those female social workers at Children's Aid who wished to work from their homes during pregnancy and childbearing years. These women did not have to give up their careers, but could do adoption assessments and placements on a part-time basis.
I also was aware that many of the women staff who left the agency for childbearing, continued their interest in the profession and intended at some point to return to their professional careers, but were in many instances somewhat uncertain as to when they could do this and what opportunities there would be. So I used a number of casework positions to create part-time work for these women who were whose child care demands were such that they could begin to devote some time to getting back into practice. And so I would set up a range of activities that they could undertake, some of them operating from their own homes, that would be more or less piecework activities like carrying out a foster home study, to other positions that would involve 1, 2, 3 days work a week. And this was very successful in bringing back these very well qualified social workers into practice and returning to the agency.
For his doctoral research, Jim couldn't locate a Canadian welfare agency willing to engage in an experiment on using staff with different levels of knowledge and skill. Ultimately, he conducted his research during the mid-1960s in a large welfare agency in Chicago's Black Ghetto. His focus was on topics just emerging on social work's landscape: staff utilization, job satisfaction, and worker morale. His awareness of racial tensions and the turbulence of the civil rights movement were brought home to him on his daily walk to the agency.
Well, I was still very much interested in the issue of staffing, and particularly the utilization of social work personnel with different levels of qualification. I felt that the profession needed to address that particular issue and develop ways of better utilizing social work staff in providing services. So that was the particular kind of research that I wanted to do in the doctoral program. In order